Thank you. Thank you so much. Do we need to turn this mic off?
It's off.
All right. It is such an honor to be here today, and I want to thank Dr. Liz Joy for inviting me, for the American College of Sports Medicine for accepting me, and for all of you for choosing to spend the very last hour of the conference here listening to me talk about my work. And I would also like to thank my husband, Jeff Horowitz, for all of the support he's given me all the years and inspiring me to be the best person I can be. So our field is perplexed by how to create lasting exercise motivation and sustained physical activity. These are questions probably most of you in the audience really think about. Well, today I'm going to talk about some of the surprising science for cultivating and creating the context that will support these essential outcomes for our field. Oh, here's the clicker. I want to start with a couple of business comments. First of all, I'd like to disclose that I have a training and consulting company. I also want to acknowledge that I'm not going to be addressing core issues that really have tremendous impact on physical activity, like poverty and lack of education and resources. I'm not going to be talking about the structural level issues that also need to be solved if we're going to create a more physically active population, just the psychosocial individual level motivational issues. Despite the nuances in our field, forgive me for going back and forth between exercise and physical activity. And I want to let you know this is a concept talk. It's a story. And I'm going to be talking about a lot of science, but I'm not going to be going into detail about any of it. So if you would like to dive deeper into the studies that I'm going to be presenting today, please feel free to email me after the talk, and my email address will be on the last slide. And finally, what I'm going to present to you today reflects my perspective on the situation and the work I've done. So I invite you to compare and contrast what you've experienced and what you think and believe, and even to disagree what I have to say. And although I'm going to say this another time later, I invite you to participate in a really exciting conversation that I'm going to be having with Dr. Martin Gibala after this. We're going to have a conversation moderated by New York Times' Gretchen Reynolds that should be very exciting. So, in general, my work has been guided by a single question. Why don't most people prioritize and sustain physically active lives for almost a quarter of a century? And I want to tell you how this question found me. It started in 1993 when I was conducting my master's thesis under the mentorship of Victor Katch. And we were looking to see if exercise could reduce depression and anxiety in cancer survivors. So we did a randomized controlled trial. Well, we found that it did help with those significantly. The group that exercised reduced those psychological issues more than the control group. And I thought that was the end of the story. But we called everyone back 3 months later, and we talked to them in focus groups. I distinctly remember the people sitting around these tables smiling, talking about exercise. So you can imagine why I would be surprised by the fact that almost everyone had stopped exercising when our study had ended. So I asked, why? Why did you stop exercising? And they had a lot of reasons, I'm sure all of which you've heard in your own work. I'm busy, I have to work, I have a family to take care of, and yada, 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 all these things. And what became very clear to me in that moment is that these people had not stopped exercising because they were cancer survivors. They had stopped exercising because they were simply busy adults living their lives. And that's when I had one of these awesome light bulb moments where I said, this is a problem and I'm going to solve it. So everything I've been doing since that time has been in service of learning and solving that problem. Because I'm going to tell you a bit of a pithy story, I don't want you to walk away thinking that I'm telling you that that behavior change is easy at any point in time. It's not. It's very hard and complex. And the theories that I've used to guide my thinking are also very complex theories that don't just take the individual level into account, but also the greater social psychosocial context and cultural norms and pressures. But I'm also bringing you today to this talk the 20 plus years of health coaching I've been doing with individuals, helping them learn how to love exercising and sustain physically active lives. So I'm going to be presenting concepts from both research and real life. I'm going to take you on a journey of science and discovery about lasting motivation and physical activity. And there's a lot I want to cover. The journey starts with us as a field. Let's think about how we as a field have framed and positioned physical activity to the public. We've told people to rip their arms, not their pants, and to stretch themselves thin. Of course, they can burn it off if they work really hard, and they can get sexy legs now. In general, we've done a really good job of teaching people that they should be using exercise and physical activity to sculpt their body and get very fit. But there's also another context where we've played a very important role in how people think about and perceive physical activity. And it's in the clinician's office. And research shows that when physical activity is presented in the context of health, it's often raised in the context of weight loss. So I want to propose to you today that we've taught people to focus on the islands of distant goals. The island of weight loss. I'm finally going to drop those 50 pounds I've been carrying around for the last 20 years. And the island of getting fit. The lagoon of disease prevention. If you exercise 5 times a week for 30 minutes at moderate intensity exercise, and that means breathing like that, you can reduce your risk of getting disease X by 32%. And who doesn't want to arrive at the land of better health? And we've successfully sold this focus to our population. And how do we know we've sold it? I'm going to show you first some interviews, random interviews on the street of Ypsilanti, Michigan, where I went with a cameraman, and we just talked to people. We didn't know who were exercisers and who weren't. So let's look at one of these interviews. I think you need to start that for me.
Just the desire to stay healthy.
Probably to stay healthy.
Makes you healthier, better health. Yeah, better health.
So in response to why do you exercise, it is not uncommon for people to say they're doing it for health. And in fact, research shows that when you bring up exercise in research, health is a top-of-the-mind exercise motive. Now, a few years ago, a handful of years ago, we actually conducted a study where we asked people what are their primary reasons for being physically active. And what we found, and this was a cross-sample of individuals who work full-time. So we weren't looking to speak to specifically regular exercisers or people who weren't regular exercisers. And what we found was that 75% of our participants reported either exercising for health and or weight-related reasons. So let's think about how this might work. As a field, we pass out binoculars, and we teach people that their destination for exercise is the island of distant goals. We give people a boat, and we teach them how to row, and when they start out, they're really motivated. With the binoculars, they really believe, they're confident that they can get there. But it's actually harder and further away than it looks. And most people don't make it. They're dead in the water. So what's the problem here? The binocular problem. We've given people binoculars, and we've taught them what to focus on. And with the binoculars, the islands of being fit and thin and healthy and not being on any meds looks really close and attainable. Now let's go back to the street to see how these islands, how people experience these islands in their real life.
Is being physically active a daily priority for you?
No,
May I ask why not?
I'm still working. That's important.
Have you ever thought about starting?
Only my doctor has.
Being physically active a daily priority for you?
Well, we'd like it to be, yes. But we don't actually always exercise every day, yes.
Okay. Can you tell me why it's not a daily priority?
Time,
Time crunch.
working,
Yep.
kids stuff.
Right.
Thinking back, what motivated you to start when you were active on a daily basis?
Oh, it was always just,
What you did, just
yeah,
part of what we did, yeah.
just the desire to stay healthy.
Well, he does, but I have an office job. I drive to work in the dark. I sit in an office with no windows. I sit in front of a computer all day. And I have to force myself to get up and go somewhere. I come home in the dark. And then I don't really feel like being active.
Okay.
But I know I should.
Why do you think you should?
Oh, because I know that my body needs it.
What motivated you to start when you were doing it this summer?
I promised my physician that I would try to lose 20 pounds.
Classic, right? People do value better health, and actually that's one of the problems, and I want to explain why. I'm going to show you some data from a study where we asked people why they valued being physically active, and in general 4 different reasons came up, and I'm going to start from this side and move that way. People said they valued exercising for weight and appearance, current health, healthy aging, and for daily quality of life. And if you look at those scores on the scale of 0 to 7, you see that people highly value exercising for health-related and quality of life reasons. But then we followed them over a year to see how much exercise they did. And here's what we found. We found that in the orange column on the far left, right or left, sorry, it's hard for me to know standing up here, we found that in fact, people did between 20 and 32% more exercise than the people in the health and weight-related groups. So in essence, what people say they value and intend to do is very different than what they actually do. And this is the gap between people's intentions and behaviors. And to further look at this, let's think about that. What people really intend to do now, in theory, often is not what they do later in the realities of their busy, hectic lives. So in a recently published study, actually in the last week, a study came out in BMC Public Health where we were looking to identify how we could communicate more effectively with people. And we looked at both high active individuals and low active individuals, and we asked them about physical activity, and I'll tell you more about the other part later. But here's what one low active participant had to say. Exercising is a high priority, just because I know my family history and my genes and all that stuff. But it's not a high enough priority for me to actually. And this is the issue right here. What people intend to do is very different than what they actually do. And of course, we all know this as the established phenomenon referred to in behavioral medicine as the gap between people's intentions and behavior. So let's return to the binocular problem for a moment. When people start out, it really looks attainable. But then it's just harder and further away, and most people can't make it to the island of distant goals. And the reason why is because there's a gap. So what do you think is in the gap? Now is in the gap. And what's now? Now, our social commitment, sure, I'll come over at 5 o'clock for that barbecue instead of going to my exercise class. And that special project at work that's due in a week and is taking a lot of extra time. And the currents of conflicting obligations. Yes, I have that work project, and I'm volunteering here, and my kid has extra projects at their school too. But then the winds of shifting priorities never stop, and that big project next week winds up being due tomorrow. And of course, there's our family needs that are always paramount in our minds and hearts. And finally, there's just the activities that are just more fun to do, right? So now gets in the way. Let's take a step back and go back to what this talk is really about. It's about sustainable physical activity. It's about sustainable behavior. That is the outcome we want. But what determines sustainable behavior? It's the consistent decisions that people make now, and now, and now, and now to exercise in the moment. So if we care about that, we have to think more about decisions related to physical activity. Let's think about what some of those are. Am I going to leave for a planned spinning class or not? Am I going to continue to work, or am I going to go get those steps in? And am I going to press snooze or wake up for my friend the treadmill? Well, if we want to understand how to bridge the gap between now and later, and intentions and behavior, we have to understand decisions. And to understand decisions, we actually have to go to a different knowledge base. We have to go to how humans process information. And research shows that, in general, we have two different information processing systems. One, system 2, is based in logic, and the other system is based on experiences and affect. And when I use the word affect, this is a pretty clinical, psychological, jargony term, and all I mean when I use this word is how we feel. Do we feel happy, or do we feel sad? There are important differences between these two systems. The logic-based system is analytical and rule-based, compared to the affective system, which is more intuitive and based in experiences. This system is verbal and explicit compared to nonverbal and implicit. It's reflective and slow compared to impulsive and fast, and so fast that we don't even have to think about it. And it takes effort to use the logic-based system, whereas the affective-based experiential system can be effortless. The big picture between these two systems is that system 2 necessitates self-control and depletes with use. So the more we have to make hard choices, even the more we have to make choices between the attributes of a computer we're buying, the more we do this, the more we deplete our ability to have self-control. And this system is often based in the future, compared to the affective system, which motivates us unconsciously and is based in the now. And this is how the system works. Ooh, me see chocolate cake, I want. I don't even have to think about that. Or, I don't like you very much, and I just am going to get away. I'm going to avoid you. So what we do is intuitive and instinctual. But we need to know, what does research show that drives decision-making in the now? And a study was published in 2013 in the Journal of Consumer Research, and I want you to know this study was not about exercising, but I think the findings have important implications for our field. What they wanted to know was which has more weight on our decisions in the now, our feelings about the outcome, or some future value about that. And what they found is that the closer in time that the outcome is to the decision, the closer in time it is, the more that our feelings about the outcome, how do I feel about that spinning class in 10 minutes that I'm going to go to, outweigh the future value of that exercise class when I signed up for it for my New Year's resolutions. This study concluded that we use affect as information. We use our feelings as information every time we make a choice. And a review of the literature of the role of emotion and affect in decision making was published in 2015, and I want to share with you their succinct conclusion. Affect powerfully, predictably, and persuasively influences decision making. So why isn't our focus as a field more effective? I want to suggest to you that it's not more effective because it isn't affective, because it doesn't emphasize and promote the way we feel when we're physically active. So have we been missing something? How do we solve the binocular problem? We've taught our patients, our clients, our employees, our consumers to focus on logical goals in the future. But research in behavioral economics shows that humans' decisions are more motivated by immediate affective rewards than future logical ones. And in fact, Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman says that the affective system 1 actually steers and beats out system 2. So let's take away the binoculars. What happens when we shift our focus? we discover that there is a hidden treasure right here, right now, and it's always been there. What's in the treasure? Well, let's go back to the people on the street to answer that question. The video. Thank you. Thank you.
Is being physically active a daily priority for you?
Yes.
How long have you been doing it?
I've been doing it for decades. I try to swim about a half hour, 5 days a week.
How do you feel it affects you day to day?
It definitely keeps me enthused, and I just feel good.
If you miss a few days, how does it feel when you're not active?
I feel almost depressed.
And how does it affect you, like, day to day?
Oh, at work I feel much better since I started. Better everything. It's just easier to get up, easier to do everything.
How do you feel on days when you're not active or you've maybe gone without for a little bit?
Oh, it's rough. I don't feel good. I feel, just like crap, I guess.
I feel better everything. It keeps me enthused. We're talking about positive affective responses from physical activity. So the treasure chest of Feel Better Now is waiting for people to discover, for our population to discover. What's inside the treasure chest? Research shows that when people move, it boosts mood, it reduces depression and anxiety. Just taking a few steps, we know, generates more energy. Physical activity is an incredible way to connect with the people we care most about, and human connection is among the most motivating things in our humanity. Research shows that. Research shows that our executive function is improved and we can be more focused and creative at work when we move. We can recharge and reset ourselves. We will feel better now from physical activity. That's what's in the treasure chest. But people who are inactive might not know that movement can help them feel better now. I want to propose to you that people who are active and people who are inactive have very distinct knowledge bases and experiences with physical activity. And I want to first show you some qualitative data from a study that was published in 2016 among active people. And this is what one active person said about exercising. It has enormous impact. And if I'm not exercising one day, I notice I don't feel as well as I normally do. And I'm going to juxtapose that with an inactive person in a qualitative study that we conducted that's also being published this year through funding we got through the Paprin Group under the leadership of Amy Eiler. And we were looking to see how we might rebrand walking. And this is what a low active person said. I'm not a walker, so I really don't know fully what it feels like once you do. I heard everyone's opinion, referring to them talking about walking, helping them feel better. But if you're not doing it, she doesn't know. In fact, research shows that it's only individuals who are regularly active who use physical activity as a way to boost their mood. And in addition, inactive people might even experience moving as feeling bad. Let's go back to the story for a minute. We've given people their boats and we've told them how to row, and we tell them to work really hard. We've told them to feel the burn until they can't anymore. But let's go from this comical story to reality, because this is what our reality shows, how that they've positioned physical activity to the general population. And in fact, research on the mass media shows that reality shows are what people most reference as where they've learned about exercising. So how do you think these types of framing and energies impact people who are inactive? I want to show you another quote from our communication study that was published last week. This is what a low active person said. It makes me feel really resentful. Like, this is your extra weight, so when I do exercise, I have such a bad attitude. Why does this matter? This stuff matters a great deal, and to explain this, I'm going to go to Professor Patty Ekakak's research. His work is foundational for our field. It's the link we've been looking for, and when I learned about it about 20 years ago, it was foundational in my thinking and how I approached answering this question. And what his work shows is that the intensity of physical activity influences people's affective response during physical activity. It influences how they feel during exercise. And this is a chart. The bottom, the horizontal axis reflects higher intensity measured by blood lactate accumulation, and the vertical axis represents improvements in feeling states. And what we're going to see, and this is each circle represents different samples in the United States and the UK, and what we're going to see is that feelings worsen in general with increased intensity. But it would be logical to ask, does it matter if the feeling good happens during exercise or after exercise? And that's a question that's currently being asked a lot in the literature. A review published by Rhodes and Kate in 2015 showed that positive affective change during, but not after, moderate intensity physical activity was associated with future behavior. So I would say that the jury is still out on this question, and that there might be really important individual differences when it comes to this, but I think the literature is starting to hint at how important the during movement feelings are, and it really links very well back to the idea of System 1 and System 2. So let's think about, how does positive affect operate? And first we're going to go to Kent Berridge's work on the neuroscience of reward, and his learning, liking, wanting theory and work. And how it works is, when there's a cue or a behavior such as exercise, and you do that cue and you get a positive experience, you actually learn that association. Exercise, feel good. Then what happens is you like it. And because you like it, you want it and you keep wanting it. And this is the learning, liking, and wanting cycle. Now, Barbara Fredrickson has actually fairly recently developed a new theory of lifestyle maintenance called the upward spiral theory of lifestyle change. And she has taken Berridge's core work and embedded it as the central part of her model. And here's what she proposes: that when we have positive affective responses during a health behavior like exercise, it leads people to have unconscious, non-conscious motives for exercising, which leads to our engagement in exercise. This is a key point here. Research suggests that our positive feelings or affect during exercise actually motivates us outside of our awareness. A study was just published in the last month that showed that even when people believe that they're exercising to achieve a future goal, they were asked, why are you exercising? To achieve a future goal. It's actually the immediate rewards that are the drivers of persistence. So let me show you this graph. Not the delayed future rewards that predicted hours exercise a week over a 3-month period, but the immediate positivity they got. And to show you how this plays out in real life, let's go back to our gentleman on the street. And I just need a video one more time.
Is being physically active a daily priority for you?
Oh yes, definitely. Every day, I try to get to the gym.
Why do you make it a priority?
Just for health reasons, and that's about it. Just trying to stay healthy.
What do you feel like it does for you staying healthy?
Oh, I have more energy. I feel better. You know, everything's just a lot better being healthy.
Do you see what's going on here? He thinks he's exercising for his health. That's what he's been taught to do. But when we asked what he gets from that, we get to the real drivers. It gives me more energy. It helps me feel better. So even active people don't tend to be aware of what drives them. Not everyone, but this is a question I always ask people, and I've been doing it for years. Why do you exercise? And when people say health, I ask them more about that. And inevitably, someone says something like, when I don't do it, I feel like crap, just like the gentleman in the video. So, but does it really work? Can positive affect actually predict participation and influence maintenance? Because that's where the rubber hits the road, right? So the first research I want to present has to do with which types of exercise motives or reasons are most motivating for physical activity. And I would tell you about a text messaging study among teens. They randomized teens to get one of 4 messages through text messaging. One group was told that exercise is going to help you feel good. The other group was told that exercise is good for your health. A third group was told that exercise is going to help you feel good and it's going to be good for your health. And a fourth group was a control group. So which group of sedentary teens do you think did the most exercise at the end of the intervention? The feel-good group. But how is that? Shouldn't more motives be more motivating? It turns out this phenomenon is called goal dilution. And what happens is when you pair, and this has been seen in exercise as well as other types of behaviors, when you pair a feel-good, affective reason for behavior with a functional, logical, pragmatic one, the pragmatic one kind of sucks the power out of the positivity. So we really need to think very hard about this, and I think this can be quite a challenging question. But then you could say to me, Michelle, these are teenagers. Of course they're driven by their emotions and their hormones. And you'd be right. But then I came across this study among people between the ages of 65 and 90. They assessed their expectations at baseline. And expectations are what people expect or hope to get out of doing a behavior. And what they found was that the only expectation that predicted exercise 6 and 12 months later was feeling good, not health. Among people in this age, in this life stage, we would think that health would be very salient and very motivating, but once again, we find that it's beat out by feeling good as a reason for exercising. And I want you to know that about 10 years ago, when my own data suggested that health was a poor motivator for many people, I was very disturbed by that finding. But upon looking deeper into it, I changed my view and continue to change my view as I learn new things from research. To bring this home and summarize, I want to go back to real life, to a comment by Jane Brody, who is a very prestigious and probably the original health journalist from the New York Times. And she interviewed me about my work a few years ago, and of course you don't know what someone is going to say when they interview you, and I want to share with you what she said. If you ask me why I exercise, weight control may be my first answer, followed by a desire to live long and well. Well, that doesn't support what I've been telling you, does it? But then she says, but that's not what gets me out of bed before dawn to bike to the Y. It's how these activities make me feel. More energized, more productive, more engaged, and yes, happier. Better able to smell the roses and cope with the inevitable frustrations of daily life. And I want to deconstruct this for you. Let's go back to this. If you ask me why I exercise, it's because I'm trying to reach the island of distant goals. And why wouldn't she give that response? Because that's what we've all been socialized to do in our society. We've taught people to think that they should be exercising because they need to get to the island of distant goals. But what her comment says, what her insight shares, is that it's actually the treasures that motivates her to decide day in and day out. And so this both illuminates the problem as well as the solution. It has to do with how we as a field are socializing the population versus what's truly going to drive the daily decision making. So if we increase people's positive affect, will it increase physical activity in sustainable ways? And I want to share with you some of my work. I received a grant from the NHLBI a while ago to conduct a follow-up study on an intervention I developed to increase people taking a pleasure-based approach to physical activity. And 75% of our participants had ended the program 10 months before, and 50% had ended it 14 months before. And what we found was that participants significantly increased and sustained a 65% increase. But I'm not the only one. doing these types of interventions and getting these findings. And another intervention study did the same thing, and it was published in 2015. They also aimed to increase positive affect as a way to increase adherence. But of course, you have to look at the mediation to see if that actually hypothesized driver works. And indeed, what I found in my research, as well as what they published, was that it was the increased positive feelings from the exercise intervention that did mediate the increased adherence. So this is where the rubber hits the road. How do we help inactive individuals discover the feel-good now experiences that are inside the treasure chest? And in order to really know how to do this, we have to keep something in the forefront of our minds. And it's that we, and sorry if you don't identify as a female wearing a ponytail, we, us as a field, are very different than the general population. And the reason we're different is because we're in the field and we're passionate about the field. And so it's very primal and central to us. Whereas for other people, physical activity and exercise and maybe even health simply don't make the cut on the daily basis. So we have to keep that difference in the forefront of our minds. And we have to remember that inactive people might not even know what it feels like. Like that walker said, I don't even know what it fully feels like once you do. But then she said, I guess you have to start in order to experience it. And what I'm suggesting to you is that we as a field can give inactive people, the vast majority of the population, this new start. And I'm going to give you suggest three different strategies that you can apply immediately in your own work, whether you're an academic, a clinician, a personal trainer, a physical therapist. When I refer to reframing the why, I'm talking about our primary reason for adopting a behavior. And research shows that our whys frame the behavior and have domino effects on both motivation as well as sustainability. So a study was conducted looking at how to frame walking. And what they did was they randomized one group of people to walk, and they told them the 1 mile walk was for exercise. The second group was told the walk was for fun. Everyone did the same 1 mile walk. At the end of the walk, the people who were told it was exercise ended the walk in a significantly worse mood and ate more junk food than the people who were told it was fun. So how should we reframe or rebrand physical activity? And really, this is among the questions of our day. And so the study that I mentioned earlier that was just published last week, the way we approached it was as marketers. And we wanted to find out about people's more proximal, closer daily goals, the things that people really care about. What do people really care about? They care about being happy and successful. So we asked our participants of ethnically diverse women what makes them feel happy and successful. And I'm only going to show the happiness. What they said makes them happy is connecting with and helping others, being free of pressures and relaxing, and participating in leisure activities. And the definition of leisure is that you choose the activity that you're participating in. So let's think about, now that we know what makes them feel happy, how could we address that? How can we reorient ourselves and our messages and our frames to make physical activity align with happiness? This is what one of our walkers said in the walking study. Because walking is family time. It's time to talk about things. And even if you're in a bad mood, it starts making you think about things. And okay, you know what? I owe this bill, but guess what? It's going to be okay. So walking as a family gives this woman perspective. So let's start to fuse these new messages with these images of families walking. An active individual in our physical activity goals study that was just published said, I always feel better when she moves. It's a release for me. I don't see that as exercise. We can also use what's called positive affective forecasting. And forecasting is what people predict they're going to feel when something happens in the future. So when we when we tell people you're actually going to feel good when you move, research shows that when you tell people to expect that they're going to feel good, that it actually results in more positive experiences. That's pretty powerful. But here's what another low active participant in our happiness study said. When I'm already tired, you want to go home and relax, and exercise has nothing to do with relaxation. This is a big reality in our society. So I can't emphasize this too much. We truly need to illuminate the feel good now benefits of movement to our population, to our patients, to our consumers. And there's a couple reasons why. One is that we know positive affect motivates people unconsciously. Think about how more powerful it could be, potentially, if it also motivates them consciously. We also know that inactive individuals don't feel that physical activity can feel good. So we really need to illuminate this as a field. And the third reason why is, what I've noticed in my coaching with individuals is, because of the way we've socialized people to think about exercising, to think about the scale, and to think about the blood pressure cuff, they don't notice these things. So the very drivers are being obscured by the things that are not going to drive most people to sustain physically active lives. We want to show them what's in the treasure chest, and it's play, and it's relaxation, more energy, being in a better mood, connecting socially, having fun with the family, being more focused and creative and innovative at work, recharging and resetting ourselves. Finally, the third strategy is we need to give people permission. And it seems like this permission, what does that mean when it comes to physical activity? We don't talk about this word in our field, and it's among the most important. We need to give people permission to move in ways that feel good, and yes, even low intensity. I want to suggest that we need a new message that, in a way, the message is there. Our science is supporting this notion, but it's not getting across to people. People don't understand the newer recommendations that they can accumulate physical activity. A study that came out of the CDC within the last 2 years showed that less than 1%, let's think about that statistic for a minute. Less than 1% of this national sample understood the more moderate physical activity recommendations and the accumulation that they could accumulate them. But concerns do exist, especially within healthcare. And in many of my talks, clinicians stand up and they're kind of upset with me for suggesting that we should give people permission to do whatever the heck they want. Because one person said, my patients need higher intensity exercise to manage their diabetes. There's an optimal dose and I want them to get it. But then I asked, but do most of them stick with that higher optimal dose? And the answer is no. So we really need to shift our thinking when it comes to population level physical activity. We need to go from the research on optimal doses to the realities of real life and what we truly can help people do and institutionalize into their lives. Research shows that prolonged sitting is bad. And when you have that kind of research, it justifies saying any movement is better than none. This gives people choice. And why choice is important is because choice cultivates autonomy. And if you know self-determination theory, which is just about the most important theory for creating lasting motivation and sustainable behavior change that exists, you know that autonomy is the holy grail of sustainability. In fact, research shows when people feel autonomous through physical activity, it results in those treasures of positive feelings that people have during movement. And not only that, but systematic review that was led by Pedro Teixeira from Portugal on physical activity and exercise and self-determination theory found that autonomous motivation was related to participation in 80 to 95% of the studies. That's another very impressive statistic. People are consumers. And people are different and they want different things in different times. But ultimately, we have to start thinking about people as consumers. And to help us understand how to motivate consumers, we go to one of the leading experts in marketing and consumer behavior, which is Seth Godin. And just a couple months ago, here's what he had to say. If you want to motivate people to strive for a future-oriented goal, you need to figure out how to convert it into how it feels right now. Why? Because this hooks into system 1 that beats out system 2. We have to keep that in the forefront of our minds. We have to think about this as the experiences people are going to choose to have spontaneously. The experience of touching someone we love, of being really upset, of choosing how we make love, and of eating ice cream. Let's think about ice cream a little more deeply. Why is Baskin-Robbins so successful? You know why? Because they have 31 flavors. And when people have 31 flavors, that means they get a choice. And they get to choose, and no flavor is ever privileged. Vanilla isn't better than mint chocolate chip, and Superman doesn't beat out lemon custard, right? There's a menu, and people go to it anticipating what is going to feel good. Just like Baskin-Robbins or ice cream stores have menus that people are free. They have permission to choose whatever they want at any given moment. We need to start presenting physical activity as a movement menu that doesn't privilege any type or kind or duration or place above any other. Just like someone stands in front of the ice cream counter and mindfully, I mean, think about what a big, important decision this is, right? People don't just go and say, I'm going to have that. Now they're like, oh, which one do I feel like now? Right? That's what people do, not just kids either, right? We want to create the same phenomenon in our field. We want people to say, which physical activity experience do I feel like now? Now, you might think my colleague down the hall would feel differently about this, but I'm not really sure he does. And if you're curious about hearing more about this very conversation, I hope if you don't have to run to a plane, you will participate in a very lively and fun and informal conversation with me and Dr. Martin Gabala, moderated by New York Times journalist Gretchen Reynolds. And this is going to happen right after this session in this room. And I really think it's going to be a lot of fun. We need to rethink and redo physical activity. The exciting thing is that we need to rethink about it, how we're going to frame and communicate it, and this is actually starting to happen. The seas are changing because the National Physical Activity Plan is in the process of partnering with the global communication experts, the Frameworks Institute, to study comprehensively how we can better communicate to the population and policymakers. And if this is of interest to you, then I hope you'll email me and let me know. We're looking for organizations to partner with. If we're going to get an ROI on the last few decades of exercise research, we have to do a better job of boosting population-level physical activity. The exercise science we've done to date has been critical for giving physical activity value in our field, value in society. This research has motivated the idea that exercise is crucial for, or accepted, and physical activity is accepted as a crucial way to prevent and manage illnesses. But on our journey of science and discovery, I want to suggest to you that we're at a crossroads. And we can either go down the path we've been on, our conventional path, that maintains the status quo in our institutions, in our training, in our practice and application. Or we can get curious about what this new path might have in store for us. Should we be cautious? Yes. Should we take care in how we do it? Yes. Will it be hard? Yes. But just like we ask our patients, clients, employees, and consumers to do the hard work of changing their beliefs, mindset, priorities, and behavior, I want to suggest that we need to do the same. We are at a pivotal decision point in our field. So as a field and as individual professionals, are we going to keep giving people binoculars and telling them that their destination is the island of distant goals? Or are we going to harness the evidence-based power of affect and the feel-good now treasure chest to motivate the population to move now and now and now? Thank you very much.